Agree. Since we're considering this going to a consent agenda, what would really be helpful for me is like a highlight, a little summary, executive summary highlights. You know, here's something we really need to pay attention to, or here's some really good news, or you
That's
know,
a good idea.
any place.
Just like a quick management summary of the budget, or I'm sorry, the financials review.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We
That
can do
that would be really,
Yeah.
that
Okay.
to me is more informational, and you know, then I love going through and looking at the numbers and all
Sure.
that, but that to me is more what we ought to be looking
I think
at.
that's a
And when we
fine-
go through them really quickly, as we just did, I'm not picking on you, Lindsay. When we go through them really quickly, as we just did, you don't really, we might miss something. So
Yeah, sure.
as a board member, I rely on you guys to say, we need to pay attention here, as you've done, AJ, like with
Right.
capital projects, we need to pay attention here, we need to pay attention here.
Good idea.
Yeah, and I was going to suggest this large consent,
Uh-huh.
we can still go ahead because it's very, very rare that we don't actually approve these. And so if we do have we can give an overall consent, and if we do have a question, we can address that question later, but we don't have to reopen the whole document either. If you follow me.
Well, and it has to be on the agenda in order for us to discuss.
Yeah, and absolutely, but what I'm saying is that, you know, if we then have to reopen the whole document because someone has one question, I have never been here where it hasn't been approved, so.
Well, and they are what they are. I mean,
Yeah.
they're kind of reflecting what your actual circumstances are, so that part's not gonna change, it's just whether somebody
Has
wants
questions,
clarification. So I think I understand what you're saying, where those can
And I
be,
would be fine having it on the consent agenda and then just having a, you know, quick financial review on the agenda where, you know, there's not a motion, you know, we don't have to do a
Questions,
motion,
yeah.
yeah.
so I guess I'm hearing two different things.
Yeah.
Are you wanting the executive summary with the financials all on the consent, or are you wanting to discuss them still
No,
separately?
no, what I'm saying is if it turns up that somebody
Uh-huh.
wants to discuss
Yeah.
something, we can still have the whole consent.
Right,
Because it's not going to change the consent of this, because as
Right.
you say, it is what it is, and then if we have a question, that can come up later.
okay,
Yeah.
Not as part.
okay. So then tend to still put it on consent, and then if somebody
Right.
has a question, we can follow up. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
Okay. All right, so, and I'm making a note that we'll include a summary of any items to be, that we think is worth pointing out on the financial situation.
Good.
That's great.
Okay, so, could we get a motion then to approve those
So
unaudited
moved.
financials?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay. All right, so with that, I think, Vicki, we've got two items here that we need to have open for a public hearing. One is the amendment to the 2012 budget, and one is the 2013 proposed budget. So what I would recommend that we do is review both of those documents. We can have Lindsay review and go through them with us. And then open up one hearing to address both matters in which we can take public comment. And then we can go ahead with the approvals following the hearing.
Excellent, so
Okay.
shall we begin?
Yeah, let's do that. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on to the budget amendment, the proposed 2012 amendment.
So,
It looks like this.
so my question was, you, at the top, you have what we voted for in 2012, and the change is exactly the same as it was in 2012.
Lindsay,
So
do you
where's the
have,
amendment? What are we changing?
Here, you can see the change down below. She's putting up on the top what you guys adopted
Right.
originally. And then you'll see the enterprise fund.
It's exactly
Oh,
the
you're
same.
right, it is exactly the same.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Looks good.
All those in favor?
Good point.
Lindsay, do you have it?
The adopted number up there is not correct, I apologize for that.
Need some help.
I don't know, that one is just not correct. You adopted a budget of $804,700.
Ah, okay.
So,
The enterprise is 804. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the debt service is,
It's not the whole thing though, apparently.
And service is $359,550.
And it's just those two, right?
I'm sorry, Lindsay, would you
Okay, so
do those
the
again.
enterprise fund should be in the top, 804,000, and some change, 804,000. And the debt service fund up top should be 359,550
Right. The rest,
dollars.
the rest is the same.
Not much change in the debt. So,
It really only changed, because they're, in our debt service fund account, we had some bank charges, and those were not budgeted for. But unfortunately, the debt service budget is just close enough that any change sends us over budget.
and what about,
$50 sends us over budget.
Yeah.
Wow.
and what about
Yeah.
the
And it is for our payment, our debt
Enterprise
service
should-
payment.
Yeah.
And those
Right,
aren't
but why is
changing,
that
but,
changed?
when you add in $35 in bank charges, we just hadn't budgeted for it, so there was just no room in the debt service budget.
And what about the enterprise fund? Why is there a 31,000 change?
Well, in the budget that we'll go over, there were some variances to the expenditures, to the budget, which necessitated increase the expenditures as we project out for all of 2012 will be higher than what was budgeted by that number. It's actually less than that, but we rounded up to make sure that if for some reason we're slightly off on our estimate, we don't have to amend it again. But we can go through some of those estimates as we go over the budget, or do you want to go through them all right now?
Well, we just got done reviewing the proposed amendment, and I think we understand what it's supposed to be. Now, I would think we would go ahead and review the 2013 proposed budget so you can clarify everything, and then we'll come back to the public.
Is there anything though, Lindsay, that you can point to, that I think the question was is there anything in particular that triggered that $31,000 change?
They're probably really small ones, but for instance, on the operations, the enterprise fund operations, second line down, testing and permit fees, we only budgeted $4,000. We're expecting our actual to be $6,350 based on some tests that we were doing through the end of this year.
So it's stuff like that, and then we had the higher well 18 utility stuff, those kinds of things. It wasn't like one project that pushed it.
No, there's just small variances all over. Small tools we're budgeting 2,000. Small tools and shop supplies, we're expecting 4,000 over budget from what we had budgeted. Some items went up, some items went down.
Okay.
For instance, we had to pick up. That's all on the operations, but
I think something like this would be good to have a summary of all the changes. I mean, not for today, but in future, so Lindsay doesn't even have to explain it. It just shows, oh, well, this is the reason we have to amend it, but,
okay. Yeah, it's just,
Alright.
there's very small
I'm not
changes
sure,
kind of
Kyle,
both
honestly,
ways
that's kind of,
through. Some up, some went down.
and the reason, that's really what this document sort of intended to do, and I understand what you're asking, but when we've got maybe 15 line items that are sort of, each one is a little contributor to the overall problem, then all of a sudden I think we're probably would get the detail more effectively just going through the document, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Maybe it's depending on the circumstances.
yeah, right. If it were just one thing, then that would be surely simple enough to do, so.
And just a question about, so this is necessary, a necessary resolution for us to comply with state law around
The budget law.
Budget law.
Okay.
You can never appropriate less than what your expenditures are. You always have to make sure that you have a balanced budget and you have more revenue than expenditures. And so the problem is, we put stuff in, if you don't put it in contingency, we put it in reserve funds, but then we have to dip into that.
Yeah.
It's gonna naturally trigger an amendment because it's not technically appropriated when it's below that line,
Got
but
it.
in a reserve fund. So when we have to dip into that, we have a well issue or something like that we have to utilize, then it's going to just naturally trigger an amendment. With you guys, because you have the revenues there, it's more of a paperwork kind of tidying up than it is with districts that rely on advances from developers, where developers don't actually make those advances, and then you are operating in a deficit. So here, it's just moving those revenues above the line and kind of reallocating to make sure that we're keeping within that balance, and just more of a technicality, more than, you know, hey, we didn't have the revenues, it's just moving it from below the line to above the line.
Okay.
But we do have to do it in order to remain in compliance with Colorado
Yeah.
budget law.
Great, thanks.
So we'll get a clean audit too,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we do.
That's
you
what I
know,
was
so
right.
we
Just
got it,
thinking,
yeah.
that's the audit.
Okay, so let's go ahead and review the 2013 draft budget.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just explain the format, and I think we looked at this, a similar version at the last meeting, but on the front page there are 3 columns, the 2011 actual, the 2012 adopted budget, and then in the far right-hand column is the 2013 proposed budget.
And is that the 2012 adopted originally, or the 2012 adopted
No.
with this change?
Not with that change.
Okay, so it's the original.
Right.
Okay.
So in the first line, you'll see our assessed valuation, and that number is given to us by the county, and it's based on all of the taxable property within the district. And so it went up a little bit in 2013, so the AV, or the assessed valuation, is $16,131,369. We're proposing the same mill levy as in the past 2 years, which is the 46 mills. That mill levy would, we would derive revenue based on our assessed valuation and mill levy of $742,043. So that's the cover sheet.
So, you want comments as we go, or, I mean, one of my questions is, if we had 100 and, I don't know how many properties that should have been reevaluated, it doesn't seem to be reflected in these figures at all.
Well, it can't be at this point. We're reliant on the county to give us that information. So, and now if they have in the valuation report that they're giving us, you know, in future years, we hope that it looks better, because we think they're making some corrections in their own records.
Right, I mean, one would hope that between 2012 and 2013, given that we told them how many properties there would be more than 131,000.
Well, that was our hope earlier in the year, but, you know, this is our preliminary valuation.
Okay.
We're due to receive our final valuation by December 10th.
Okay.
I honestly don't anticipate a change significantly one way or
It
the
doesn't
other.
look like it.
You know, so I think we plan for what we know.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we have to do.
Jennifer's letter, I think, the last letter is gonna produce some activity over there.
Yeah, well, that's somewhere
I hope
else
so.
on the agenda.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
we'll come
Okay,
back to
great.
that. So that's our valuation, our proposed mill levy, and the revenues derived therefrom.
Okay.
If you turn the page one more time, we've got 5 columns on this page. 2011 actual column, so that's what our actual costs were in 2011. And then the next column over is the year-to-date actual, so that's through October, what our actual revenues and expenses were for 2012. The mid column is the 2012 adopted budget. And then the next budget over is where we estimate that we'll end the year. And then the far right-hand column is the proposed budget for 2013. So I'll just continue to run through this, and Lindsay, you can jump in, or I may end up handing it over to you, but we expect to start the year with the $74,936. With that, we would add our revenues.
So,
Get
okay,
to our
so,
Go ahead.
so we have at the end of an estimated 2012
Mhm.
balance of 3,571.
And where's, oh yeah,
2012,
And the
end
top,
of year.
yeah.
And yet we have a beginning balance of 2030 of 74,936.
mm-hmm.
So-
Beginning balance.
Beginning balance, so where
Beginning
does,
balance in 2012 was,
The ending balance. Yeah, so if you look at the ending balance in 2012, it'll match the beginning balance in 2013. And then likewise, the ending balance in 2011 will match the beginning balance in 2012.
Wait,
no,
it
Martin,
doesn't.
it doesn't though.
Oh, it
Lindsay,
doesn't?
did you see that? The ending balance is 5,827 in 2012, and then we've got 3,571.
That was
I'm
the
sorry.
adopted budget though.
Oh,
Adopted
yeah.
budget. The actual,
Sorry.
the 2011, the very bottom line is 3571, and then the 2012 estimate is 3571 beginning balance.
Okay.
So look at the 2011 actual column,
Okay.
far left.
Right,
That ends at 3571. That's what carries forward to the 2012
okay.
top of
And
the
then-
Alright,
estimate.
okay, I see, I see, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I was looking at
So
the
it's
wrong
down,
column.
up, down, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And then on that same column for the 2012 estimate, that ending balance of 74,000 is the balance that carries
Goes forward,
forward.
right, okay, great,
right.
thank you.
Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah.
So to that beginning balance, we would add our revenues. We just talked about that tax revenue derived from the mill levy and valuation. We estimate interest on property tax of 2,000. Specific ownership taxes, which is vehicle registration, we estimate the district share to be of $70,494. And then we just plugged in $300 in miscellaneous income. We don't know what that'll be or if we'll get any. And then interest of $50, which is very conservative. So that would give us total revenue of $814,887. Add that to the beginning balance, and you have $889,823. Now, the costs in the general fund for 2013 are much as what we looked at. I think they're all the same as what we looked at the last meeting. We're not budgeting any costs for elections, but we know we'll have to pay county's treasurer's fees of $22,261. We know our audit will be about $12,000. We're budgeting 90.
So, I saw a document that asked budget, audit for 8,000, not more than 8,000.